Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Sofa Sports News Show, brought to you by sofasportsnews.com and Greek Beat Radio. I'm joined by a very, very special guest.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Sofa Sports News Show,
the one and only Jonas Giaever. Oh, we've got another special guest. That's a surprise. Dan DeLuca.
Better late than never. Sorry, James.
Dan, well, a pleasant surprise. So anyway, as I was saying, we're joined by Jonas Giaever, football journalist. Jonas, how you doing, my friend?
I'm all good. Just trying to recover from that amazing Champions League final we had yesterday.
It's depressing to think that it's over and there's not really much else to watch now.
Yeah, true. Very true.
We're also joined by our regular, Mr. Dan DeLuca. It was touch and go whether he was going to make it, but he popped up just in the nick of time.
And Greek Beat
Dan, how you doing?
I'm joined by a very, very special guest.
Doing well, thank you. Doing well.
Feedback,
man. Good.
Yeah, got a bit of feedback there. No, doing very well. I've managed to join you for the
Don't
beginning.
worry, it's sorted now. Right, Dan. Dan, quickly tell us a little bit about how the atmosphere was in Cardiff yesterday. I know you was there.
To be honest, Cardiff was absolutely brilliant. I've been to a lot of big games before. I've never been in and around the Champions League final. I've been to a European Championship final, international level. But the thing about Cardiff is it's a small city, but the stadium is right in the middle of the city. So, which is very different to a lot of major stadiums where they're slightly out of town. So the atmosphere was brilliant. Fans mingling together as you'd expect. It was very peaceful, lots of singing, lots of flag waving, lots of chanting. Police presence, but they stayed out of the way. It was a really good atmosphere before the game, building up to the game. I was just sad I couldn't get in the stadium, unfortunately.
Oh, unfortunately. But the main thing is you got to soak up a bit of the atmosphere. Obviously, Real Madrid cemented their place as probably the greatest football club of all time. Actually, definitely as the greatest football club of all time. First team to retain the trophy in the UEFA Champions League era. And that was Real Madrid's record 12th triumph in the competition, 3 in 4 seasons. Jonas, what did you make of the game? Juve seemed to start the game very strongly, but they couldn't come out with the same intensity in the second half.
No, I not necessarily Juventus didn't come up with the same intensity. I just felt that Real Madrid managed to overpower them. They used their strengths and they got their game going down the flanks as you'd expect them to do. And Juventus, I think, should have started with Cuadrado in order to sort of fence off Marcelo on the left, and you would have sort of locked down that side. But when you manage not to compromise Marcelo nor Carvajal, you're setting yourself up for some major trouble. And when Real Madrid got going in the second half, I mean, there was no stopping them, and I expected that to happen. Once I understood that they weren't ever going to sort of fend off the wide backs, but I was very surprised that Juventus sort of strayed away a little bit from their usual game plan of having 2 down each flank instead of going for a 3-back line and then the 2 wides and Alexandro and man, who played on the right? I can't even remember who played on the right now for Juventus.
Dani Alves.
Dani Alves. He wasn't even a factor in the game for the most part because he was so much fenced off because he had to play so far at the back. I mean, usually you'd have Cuadrado up there, helping him out so he could overlap him, but you didn't see Dani Alves at all. So I just think that Real Madrid were perhaps a little bit stunned in the start, and that's usually what happens with Real Madrid. They don't always start at the top. They don't always start on the front foot, but once they get going, usually around the 30th minute, 45th minute, 50th minute mark, there's no stopping them. And I suppose Allegri's tactic worked for 45 minutes, but they still, I mean, once you have Ronaldo, you have the sort of players that they have, they're always going to be in the game, and they showed that. And in the second half, they just completely dominated them.
Dan, what did you think? What went wrong for Juve in the second half? It looked like they just didn't come out, but there's got to be more.
Yeah, I think Real Madrid were caught surprised by Juve's start and by Juve's tactics. A bit like Jonas, I was expecting Juve to set up a certain way where they've had success. Allegri said himself after the game that he wanted to catch an early goal and then be able to revert back to what they'd expect and catch on the break. I don't think it was ever going to work this time. And once Real Madrid worked out what was going on, they regathered their thoughts at half time. They come out all guns blazing. And I know the second goal was deflected, but you felt that Real Madrid were in the ascendancy, and it was only a matter of time. Having Bazzali's 36, and age isn't normally a factor in Italian sides because they preserve energy well. But when you've got him switching between two positions, I think they were asking for trouble. Like Jonas said, Alves was completely nullified. Then in the last 25 minutes of the game, Juventus weren't even chasing the game either. They were almost resigned to defeat, resorting to long balls, which you're not used to with an Italian side. The one thing you get with Italian teams is patience, and they don't panic, and they will try and pass and play their way back into the game. They didn't even do that, and you ended up in a situation with Marcelo overlapping. When Cuadrado eventually did come on, obviously it was a total disaster. Bit of frustration. He didn't play very well when he got the ball. He was overhitting crosses. He was miscontrolling the ball, making poor choices, and then it boiled over in the instant that got him sent off. And really frustrating day for Juve. And obviously they've had a great season, but
I was going to mention the Cuadrado incident a little bit later on, but as you touched on it already, let's talk about that. Was it a sending off? Is it just petulant behaviour? Did he deserve a red card? Could the ref not have dealt with it by just having a word?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a red card for me. You need a referee to show common sense there. You need a referee to do his homework ahead of a big game. I mean, look, it's Sergio Ramos. It's not a secret that Sergio Ramos does this sort of thing. Why he felt he needed to do it at that point in time, I'm not so sure. I know people will say Cuadrado was silly, but the linesman especially was 2 yards away. He was on top of the incident. It wasn't too hard to see that there was nothing involved there, and the referee sending him off. I mean, it didn't spoil the game because the game was all over, but it just added something to the game that didn't really need to be discussed. I was disappointed with Ramos, but yeah, there was no need for the red card whatsoever, in my opinion. Very disappointing.
Jonas, what did you make of the incident? Did you think it was a red card?
No, but I think it's difficult when you have the captain of Real Madrid lying on the floor screaming at you to give the other guy to give the guy a second yellow card. I mean, it's the captain of Real Madrid. It's one of the most decorated footballers we've ever seen. I think he used his seniority. I think he overplayed the situation. Of course, I don't think once I saw it in real time, I'll be honest and say I thought, wow, Cuadrado has done something completely stupid there. But Ramos overplayed that situation. To me, it's more a yellow card for diving more so than anything. But again, the captain of Real Madrid, one of the most decorated players of all time, perhaps the most influential footballer in the past 4 years for Real Madrid in terms of scoring important goals, important tackles, and being a figurehead for the team. It's difficult to not say he's correct when he's asking for the referee to make a decision, I think. So all in all, I'm looking at it in a big picture. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's a little bit of a blemish in terms of Ramos's record. And I think it was Rio Ferdinand said today, or said after the game, that Ramos will be a bit embarrassed when he sees that one. He will be embarrassed to have leveled himself to that or gone to that level, I suppose. But then again, in the great scheme of things, the game was lost. You can't look at that situation and think, oh, what does that mean for the game? What does that mean for Ramos in general? Because it really doesn't mean anything. But yeah, it's petulant behavior. It's stupid. And from a player like Ramos, who I have a lot of respect for, always had a lot of respect for him in terms of the type of player he is, going to that level or doing that when you're 3-1 up, I believe they were at the time. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's stupid. It's unnecessary. But then again, suppose you do anything you can to win and solidify a victory. And he certainly did that.
Dan, did you want to come in again on that?
Yeah, I just think I was always of the opinion that a player would look back and be embarrassed when he sees that. But then with Ramos, he's looked back in the past and he's obviously not embarrassed because he continues to do it. I mean, there was a similar incident in the 2012 European Championship final where Spain were 4-0 up against Italy in the 90th minute. They were down to 10 men because a player was injured. There had no subs left. And you had Ramos diving in the box trying to win a penalty against a team that are already beaten and deflated. And like Jonas says, in the end, it doesn't matter because it's a 4-1 emphatic victory. And so it'll be brushed under the carpet. It's just a shame. It's just a shame that one of the most decorated players in the last decade of European football, internationally, club level, feels the need to carry on behaving in this way when he's one of the best centre-halves around.
I think there's two things that he does, though. He does that on a continuous basis, and he also wins on a continuous basis. So I don't see the reason for him to change the way he does things. I agree it's stupid, but I mean, every genius or every great player has usually... I'm not saying that Ramos was a genius by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm saying any great player has always had one or two things that they've done that's no one quite understands. Why did they do that? If you look at any great player, even Messi in the past couple of years, he was the only one that you sort of, he's never done anything wrong. And then he started, headbutting players with that one time against Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League. Every great player has had those moments. And I don't think Ramos is any better or any worse than anyone else. But I don't like to be judgmental regardless of those situations. I think he keeps winning. He keeps being influential. He keeps being, in my opinion, the most influential player Real Madrid has, even more so than Cristiano Ronaldo. And he wins. So him diving in the 90th minute or diving to get Cuadrado sent off, in a great scheme of things, seemingly does not matter on his record. I don't think we look back at it in 10 years' time and say, remember when Ramos used to throw himself around? No, we'll go in 10 years and say, remember when Ramos was the captain of the Real Madrid side that repeated the Champions League triumphs in 2016 and 17? That's what we'll be talking about, not those silly fouls and silly dives that he's doing right now.
Fair point, I guess. Guys, Cristiano Ronaldo was on the score sheet again twice last night. Casemiro and Asensio chipped in with goals. When we're talking about Cristiano Ronaldo, are we talking about the greatest player ever? Jonas, you want to start on this one?
Oh my God, this is a difficult one because whenever I'm asked this question, I always say there's two debates. There is who is the greatest player of all time, and then there's who is the best player of all time. In terms of the best player of all time, in terms of level, in terms of what we've seen, what we've not seen, I didn't live during the Johan Cruyffs and the Pelés and the Franz Beckenbauers. I did not see those in their prime, so it's difficult for me to compare. But I always like to think that football has always gotten better. Football today in the 2010s are better than the football in the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, and so forth. So in terms of the best players of all time, I am forced to say Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Those are the two best ones. In terms of the greatest ones, it's difficult to argue against 3 World Cups for Pelé. It's very difficult to argue against that. I think the World Cup is the biggest thing you can win. Ronaldo and Messi have won 4 Champions Leagues. Ronaldo has a couple more. He has a couple of league trophies with Man United. He has 2 league trophies with Real Madrid. Messi has 1 more Ballon d'Or. Ronaldo has a European Championship, which Messi has never won the Copa America or the World Cup. So, I mean, I think Messi and Ronaldo are the two greatest of my era, of what I've seen and what I will probably ever see. But if Ronaldo is number 1, it's so difficult to say, because then I'm discarding so many other players, and I will be discarding Lionel Messi as well, which I don't think you can.
Jonas, sorry,
yeah.
You said there that you think the World Cup is the biggest prize in football, and I agree with you to an extent, but do you not think it's a bit unfair to judge players on World Cup success, considering that they can't really help what country they were born in and who they can represent?
Yeah, and that is a perfect argument, and I completely understand that, because people will say, well, what about George Best? Well, what about the Ryan Giggses of the world? What about Johan Cruyff, even though he played 2 World Cups, he comes from a country like the Netherlands? What about Zlatan Ibrahimovic in the grand scheme of things? I mean, I understand that argument. I respect that argument. And it's unfortunate that argument usually trumps every single other argument. But I think when you look at it, the greatest trophy you can win, the biggest trophy you can win, is the World Cup. And it's what it comes every 4th year, so there's not a trophy that you will see being won by a lot of players. I mean, McDonald Mariga won the Champions League with Inter in 2010. Have you heard about him since? Goran Pandev, have you heard about him since? I mean, Ryan Bertrand started the Champions League final and won it with Chelsea. Have you heard anything more about how he's done since? No, you haven't. But the players that win the World Cup are cemented into history forever and ever and ever. And you'll always remember, if not every 23 player, you'll always remember the core. You won't always do that with every single Champions League winner. I mean, Stoja Bucuresti won the Champions League as well. I mean, you remember Dukadam, who saved 3 penalties for that side, but you won't remember anyone else. So I mean, when you look at a legacy, I think the Champions League is second. I think the World Cup is number one in terms of prestige. And then you have things like the European Championship, the Copa America and so forth. So for me, the World Cup is the biggest. And when you look at who's won it the most, it's Pele. He has 3. So unfortunately, he never played in Europe, so he won't ever have said to have played in the Champions League. He's won the Copa Libertadores, which is the South American equivalent. So greatest and best, very different debates. Is Cristiano, if I was going to make a Mount Rushmore, if you think about that great monument in the United States, you have Pele, you have Messi, you have Maradona, and you have Cristiano Ronaldo. So those are my 4, if I have to pick the 4 greatest.
Dan, Ronaldo, is he the greatest? Is he up there? Can we argue?
Well, of course, he's up there. I like the Mount Rushmore analogy. I agree with Jonas to an extent where we're saying in the era that you're in, it's if football does improve, things get better, technology improves. I was watching a Tottenham montage the other day, and David Ginola in 1999 scored an unbelievable goal, took his share in like the Vesta type, whereas you look now and the technology's improved, you've got Under Armour, better boots, so football does improve. So I agree with that point. I'm a big fan of my international football, and I agree that the World Cup is the pinnacle. It's the absolute pinnacle for me, the World Cup. But there's anomalies in the World Cup too, as well, a bit like the Champions League. So a bit like Goran Pandev, Stefan Givash started a final ahead of Thierry Henry in 1998. He comes to Newcastle and he was absolutely useless. Luca Toni, he's got a decent goals record.
Luca Toni was great. Luca Toni was great. I can give you Givash. I cannot give you Luca Toni.
He's not giving me Luca Toni. And obviously, being Italian, I hero worship most of that squad. But are we going to compare Luca Toni because Luca Toni's won a World Cup? Of course not. So there are anomalies, and I think in Cristiano Ronaldo's case, or someone like Gareth Bale, reaching the semi-final of the European Championship with Wales compared to the size of Wales, the history of Wales, that's probably a good enough achievement. Sure. Messi, he's fallen short in a lot of international tournaments. You're most likely to compare with Maradona. But looking at Maradona and what he did with Argentina, I feel in a way that if Maradona played in the 2014 final against Germany that went to extra time, I get that feeling that Maradona might have made the difference in that game and Messi didn't. So when I'm comparing Maradona and Messi, I still need to look at that World Cup in '86 as the thing that makes a difference for me in that particular case. And obviously winning titles at an unfashionable club at Napoli who haven't won anything since or for decades before. So it's really difficult when judging the greatest of all time. The thing you would say about Ronaldo, everything you could say about him as a negative, he's slowly ticking off the list. He's won a European Championship with Portugal. He's rattling Champions Leagues off. He's catching up on the Ballon d'Or front. He's a frightening goal scorer. He's absolutely frightening. He's reliable. He's going to turn up at big games. So it's so hard to pick one. Messi is a style of football that I prefer to Cristiano Ronaldo if I'm comparing the two. Every I've ever seen a Maradona is absolutely mesmerising. And his legacy still lives on. And the amount of goals he scored are still yet to be surpassed, whether he's played in Europe or not. We don't know what would have happened, but it's hard to sit here and say he wouldn't have had success, because I think he would have.
Fair enough. Guys, let's move on to Zinedine Zidane. A lot of people were unsure about Zizou when he took over the job. People were questioning his credentials and whether he had the stomach to be a manager of a club the size of Real Madrid. Jonas, I heard you speaking about Zinedine Zidane on Shoot the Defence. Big shout out to Shoot the Defence and our good friend Stel. Has he now proven that he can be considered as a top class manager? Has he done enough, or is the jury still out on Zinedine Zidane?
It's becoming more and more difficult for me to discredit him at all, or disregard him in any sense, because he has been a manager now for give it a fantastic Real Madrid side with fantastic players and great resources and everything you could ever dream of, but he is still winning. I mean, he's won 2 Champions League trophies in a year and a half as a manager. It is unheard of. It's something we've never ever seen before. And you could have last season perhaps said, well, Benitez was so bad that regardless of who was ever put in, it was always going to be better. And Zidane is Zidane, and just by him being there, I said on Shoot the Defense that it lifts the spirit, because when you sit in the dressing room and you're trailing 1-0, for example, and you see Zidane come in there and say, all right, guys, this is what we got to do to win, you instantly believe that he knows what needs to be done to win, because he has won. He knows exactly what it is to win. I think a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo is extremely, extremely motivated by a guy like Zidane, because Zidane has, well, face it, he's been a greater player in the grand scheme of things than Cristiano Ronaldo has been. When Ronaldo retires, that debate will definitely be out again, and perhaps I think Ronaldo will go down as a greater player than Zidane. But for now, Zidane's legacy and whatever he's done in football surpasses Cristiano Ronaldo. That has a lot to do with the World Cup, as you mentioned earlier. But I think looking at him as a manager now, I was having this discussion last night on Twitter with a couple of other journalists in Norway. Is he, if you look at career as a player and as a manager, is he perhaps the greatest ever footballing person that we've ever seen? Because he's won 2 Champions Leagues. He won a Champions League as a player. He won a European Championship. He won the Champions League. So, I mean, and the Ballon d'Or at least 2 times, if I'm not mistaken. So I think in terms of greatest footballing person, he's certainly up there with Johan Cruyff. In terms of the greatest manager of all time, or one of the greatest of all time, he's touching surface. He is definitely touching surface. He will probably need one more. He'll probably need to prove himself somewhere else, perhaps, maybe even win something with France or Algeria or something as a manager. I mean, he's part Algerian, so perhaps that would be something that would interest him down the line. But it's hard not to say yes. At this stage, it's hard not to say yes. But I do wonder, much like I said with Diego Simeone as well, if you place Zinedine Zidane at Arsenal, if you place Zinedine Zidane at Chelsea, if you placed him at Inter Milan, would he be as good? The same way would Diego Simeone be as good if you placed him at Man United, if you placed him at Man City, if you placed him at AC Milan. I still think that they need to prove themselves, both of them. And Zidane, perhaps not as much as Simeone, but I would like to see him somewhere else before I can say definitely yes, he's one of the greatest. Because Guardiola went to Bayern Munich and he won. I mean, he just say whatever you want about the team that he had, he still won. He's going to win a championship with Man City down the line as well. So I think he's up there. He's probably a step above Zidane right now. But Zidane is, he's very quiet. He's very quiet. Doesn't say much, but he wins. And as long as he does that, he'll be regarded as one of the greatest. But I mean, last year you could have sort of said the Roberto Di Matteo thing when he won with Chelsea. It was like, oh well, if Di Matteo could do it, Zidane could have done it. But now he's going a full season. He's won the double, the La Liga and the Champions League. Very quiet in the transfer market, just building and building and building a team. So I think he's been highly, highly underrated by people like me. And I think that
and me.
And you, and I mean, we're looking at him. We're looking at perhaps the next great manager. But I'd like to see him prove himself somewhere else, or prove himself for maybe a year or 2 more at Real Madrid as well. Can he build another great team? Because I mean, once Ronaldo leaves, once Bale leaves, can he, for example, make Asensio into a great player or into one of the best players in the world? Will Isco develop into one of the best players in the world? If he can sort of prove that and sort of have another legacy built on the players in the next team that he would have to create, then definitely he's up there. But again, I'm not disregarding him like I have done earlier. I'm not disregarding him, but I'm saying that he is close, and he is getting closer with each and every game. And 2 Champions Leagues in a season and a half is unheard of, and very, very impressive.
Dan, what do you make of Zizou's managerial capability?
Great mouth at the end there, because I was going to come back at his original comments and say, in a manager, I like to judge a manager on whether they can rebuild a team for a second time. That's the judge of a great manager often, and a little bit more longevity with a manager. So if he does win a Champions League again in 5 years' time, then, that's the cherry on the cake. Obviously, he's had a great start. He's had a great side. And you can't discredit him because of that. But he still needs to do a little bit more for me. So in the modern era, I find the bigger clubs in Europe are able to get the bigger players. Winning becomes a little bit easier. So Pep Guardiola went to Germany. I judge Pep on his time in Germany, on his Champions League record there, which wasn't fantastic. He lost every time he come across a big club. That winning the league at Bayern Munich is an expectation for me at this current time. Just like winning the league at Juventus is an expectation for Allegri, like 6 in a row. A bit like Rodgers winning the league with Scotland. In Scotland, that's not going to impress me. So I will judge a manager in the modern era if they can pick up a title in 2 different countries. So they've had to learn to manage in a different style against different types of opposition in different atmospheres. That's what he'll have to do for me to be propelled with the likes of Johan Cruyff, Franz Beckenbauer, which is a player. We were talking about players who've won things as players and a manager. So there is a list, and he's on his way to joining it. He's had a much better start to his managerial career than perhaps we thought, because he started off, it took him a little while to find his feet. But it's been a big achievement what he's done, and we can't take that away from him. But just a little bit more before I hold him in that high regard.
Fair enough.
I'd love to see how I'd like to see how he does on an international level. Sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, it's so intriguing that he seems to be able to build an atmosphere, a winning mentality in such a quick time. I'd love to see him in a international championship sort of atmosphere where he has, say, 3 weeks to build up a team, pick his players, see if he can rally them, and create that sort of atmosphere. I'd love to see him try and create that somewhere else, and especially if France hire him down the line. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it, but I think that he's on his way, definitely on his way. And I mean, if you look at players or people as players and managers, there's a list, and that's Johan Cruyff is there, Franz Beckenbauer is there, Pep Guardiola to some degree. Perhaps he wasn't the greatest of players, but I mean, in terms of manager, he's one of the absolute greatest. And I think Zidane is again the Mount Rushmore. I'll say those are the 4 ones that when you look at the most influential people and the greatest player manager combination, he's on that. He's on in that bracket. But if he is the greatest manager of all time or one of the greatest managers of all time, I'm not too sure.
I think I agree with everything both of you have said, and I think he has a lot of potential as a manager. Obviously, like you said, 2 Champions Leagues in a year and a half is unheard of. But what worries me, and it's a bit of the same issue I have with Pep Guardiola. Now, don't get me wrong, I've been on the Sofa Sports News show many times and defended Pep Guardiola when certain members of our team have gone against him, not mentioning any names, Dan. But I think with Pep Guardiola and Zinedine Zidane, they've both been fortunate in the sense that they've started their managerial careers at probably the 2 biggest clubs in the world. They've been right. They've walked into 2 of the greatest teams we've seen in our lifetimes. And so it's very difficult for me personally to say that Zinedine Zidane is a great manager because he hasn't built a team yet. And similar with Pep Guardiola, I think obviously he done fantastic things at Barcelona, but the basis was already there. And now he's at Manchester City. We're looking at Pep Guardiola and we're not quite sure what he's trying to do. And I'm not sure that he knows exactly what he wants to do, in the sense of he went out last summer, he spent a fortune on Claudio Bravo, and this season he's gone and spent another fortune on another young goalkeeper. And it seems to me that these managers, as great as they are, can they work on a budget? Can they work under difficult circumstances? The jury's still out for me on both of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree what you're saying there, and we're going to find out when the time comes, when Zidane does go to another job, which will happen. Real Madrid, they're not shy in swinging the axe when things slow down. Pep Guardiola, he'll get 3 years at Manchester City. If he has 2 seasons like he did last year, he won't be there. So we will get to see that at some point. But as part of going into a club that size and benefiting from the infrastructure that's already in place, that's what comes with being a legend at a club like that. So where Jonas was making the link between exceptional footballers and exceptional managers, that's the benefit that Guardiola and Zidane have got, being good enough as a player to establish themselves as a legend as a club of that size.
Yeah.
And that's why. And Luis Enrique, he obviously got a chance as well for a similar reason to Barcelona. He didn't do as well, and he's been moved on. Obviously, he didn't have the benefit of the same squad Guardiola had, but it's still an opportunity that a normal manager wouldn't get. So that's the reward for being the players they are, and at clubs like that, that's how they do their business. So we have to accept that. But there will be a time when Zidane has to do it elsewhere, and that's when we'll judge him. That's when I'll judge him, because plenty of managers have achieved great things at Real Madrid. They've been sacked seasons later, sometimes even days later. So there'll be a time when Zidane has to rebuild, and that's when we'll know for sure, I guess.
Oh yeah,
right,
don't get me wrong.
If you look at it, sorry, we mentioned that Real Madrid are very happy in terms of firing their managers, and if we look away from Carlo Ancelotti, because Ancelotti won the Champions League and so forth, they hadn't won the Champions League since 2002 until Ancelotti came. Can you list off all the great managers that have been at Real Madrid and had great squads, the greatest of players, and didn't get the job done? Zidane has been there for a year and a half as a manager with a squad that, yes, is one of the best squads we've ever seen. But I think that the Galactico squad of Beckham, Raul, Figo, Ronaldo, Zidane himself, I mean, that's one of the greatest squads of all time. Makelele was there as well. Obviously, they removed Roberto Carlos, there you go. Fernando Hierro, Ivan Helguera. I mean, they had so many great players. They had so many great squads. And the managers they've had, I mean, Manuel Pellegrini was there. Jose Mourinho was there. Vanderlei Luxemburgo was there. I mean, they've had some of the best managers. Fabio Capello was there. I mean, they've had a list of great managers, a list of fantastic managers, and Juan de Ramos. But but still, I mean, they had so many fantastic managers and so many names that just couldn't get the job done. And Ancelotti came in and won it. That's all well and good. Was replaced by Benitez, which didn't go as well. And then Zidane did it. And I mean, you had to wait all those years. And Zidane was part of that team that with Ancelotti that won it as well. He was the assistant manager, remember? So I mean, he's been part of the whole process of finally winning again. So he's been there for the whole time. So I mean, perhaps it is a little bit of divine intervention, given that he's being given leeway because he's such a legend at the club as well. But he's doing it, and he's done it for, you know, one season as assistant manager, half a season as manager. He won the first one, and then his first full year as manager, he wins it again. So I mean, you if you're not great, you're as close to being great as humanly possible.
Let me ask you. Let me throw a quick question at both of you. Just a quick fire question. It's just come to my head now. Do you think that Zidane has benefited from timing? Has he come into the job at the right time? Because in my opinion, Barcelona have declined this season in particular. Is he fortunate that Barcelona are not at the top of their game, and has that contributed to him having this success so quickly?
Quick fire?
Quick fire, go for it.
Yes. Yes.
And
yeah, most definitely. But obviously, he's taken the opportunity.
Yeah, fair point. It's a fair point. It's just, to me, Barcelona are not the animal that they were 2-3 seasons ago, and
they've gotten older and slower. They're older and slower. I mean, Iniesta is still great, but he's not Iniesta of 4 seasons ago. Xavi is not there anymore. I think Busquets has started declining a little bit as well, and their central defense, the core of their central defense, I'm not sold, and they don't have a right back. So I mean, it's a team that lacks a lot, and we'll have to go out in the transfer market and buy heavy this summer if they're going to challenge Real Madrid again, I think, or challenge at the peak, and they will have to, because the front line of Suarez, Neymar, and Messi demand that. So I mean, it's a little bit, if you ever seen, if any of you go to the gym, I mean, if you see the guy who has all the biceps and all the pecs, but he doesn't work his legs at all, that's sort of how I look at Barcelona. They lack leg work. They have all the abs and all the fantastic muscles up front, but they need to start doing some squats.
Yep, that's a good analogy. I like that one. We've spoken a lot about Real Madrid so far, so let's turn our attention to Juventus a little bit. Now, Juventus suffered their second defeat. They've gone to the final 2 out of 3 years now, and they've suffered another defeat. Do you put it down to Juventus being just, or Serie A, in fact, being just a bit behind La Liga in terms of quality? Is that what it's down to? Are Juventus suffering from the way their league is? Are they suffering from that?
Obviously, Serie A is always going to be close to my heart, and I'm going to defend the league a little bit. I don't like comparing leagues on the whole when it comes to this sort of situation because things change so quickly, and there's different styles of different teams in leagues that are suited. So, yeah, what we saw was the best team in the Liga dismantle the best team in Serie A. So that's the basis of the argument. I think we know that the Liga is a stronger league than Serie A at the moment without having to see that second half display to prove the point. But the flip side to the argument is just a month ago, Juventus played Barcelona, the defending champions of La Liga, the best team in La Liga of the last decade by a country mile, and absolutely dismantled them in an attacking sense in one leg and in a defensive masterclass the second leg. And they kept them at bay for 180 minutes without scoring. So the league debate falls down a little bit there. I think Real Madrid style is a lot quicker in the way they move the ball, the speed of the players, the way they run, and the power and athleticism. And I don't think Juventus were cut out to deal with that. An aging back line. Everyone says you can't defend against pace. And when Real Madrid were in full flow, they were unstoppable. It took them 45, 50 minutes to get going. And when they did, Juventus didn't have the answers. So, yeah, Serie A is behind the Liga, but I don't think that individual game is the case study any more so than saying Serie A stronger than La Liga after Juventus beat Barcelona. I think there's a lot more depth. The top players in the world join the top 2 clubs in Spain on bigger money than Serie A can offer at the moment, and I can't see that changing in the next 10 years. But Juventus, obviously, they're gonna have to go again. They've had a lot of their players from the first final. They're big players, so Pogba and Morata taken away. Their back line and their goalkeeper is obviously 2 years older, so they're going to have to reinvest and try and get some fresh ideas as to how they're going to overturn the 3 European giants of Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Bayern Munich.
Jonas, what do you think? Is it not fair to compare the 2 leagues? Is it unfair to say that's the reason why Juventus keep getting to finals and being defeated at the hands of the 2 big Spanish clubs?
I completely agree with what was said here earlier. I mean, you can't base this on one game. I mean, that game is not the case study because, as was said, I mean, you could say, well, was the Serie A that much better than La Liga when Juventus completely dismantled Barcelona? I think that what has been to Real Madrid and Barcelona and also Atletico Madrid's game is that the whole of La Liga has had to sort of evolve with Real Madrid being so superior, with Barcelona being so superior, with Atletico Madrid finally coming into making it a big 3 more so than a big 2. You see this season, Sevilla were up there for a long time until they completely collapsed. That league, in a way, the teams have understood that they need to find different ways to challenge. They've had to build slowly, they have to build gradually, and be patient. In Serie A, historically, usage of money and usage of getting players quickly in has not necessarily always been to the league's gain. I think Juventus have outsmarted the better part of the league. I think they've benefited greatly from the ownership situations at AC Milan, the ownership situations at Inter Milan. But I think as Serie A teams will finally learn that they will never perhaps challenge Juventus financially, perhaps never challenge them in terms of prestige, but they will need to build gradually. And I think as long as Bayern Munich in Germany and Juventus in Italy are the 2 by far greatest sides, no one will challenge them, no one will do any harm to them whatsoever. Both of those leagues will stagnate, not necessarily decrease that much, but they will stagnate, and their level will perhaps not follow the likes of Spain, perhaps not follow the likes of England, even though I think the Premier League is at an all-time low as well. But I think when teams sort of look to how all the teams around, especially Atletico Madrid, have challenged the stronghold in Spain, I think that league will grow, and I think that Juventus will grow, because through competition, your own level will always enhance. You will see that with PSG next season as well. You know, they were finally dethroned. I mean, Monaco showed that perfectly. They steadily grew, steadily created a core of players. They were fantastic in the Champions League, made the semifinals. No one picked them to be there. I certainly didn't. And I think that they've proven that gradual building, being patient, understanding that there's perhaps 3-year plans, 5-year plans, as opposed to 1-year plan, 2-year plan, will always help in terms of the final product. It's kind of difficult to explain because you have to sort of see this happen. But I've seen this especially with Sevilla. They've always grown and steadily built, and when they've had players removed, you know, when Rakitic left, when Bacca left, they understood that they had to rebuild their side again. And I think that the AC Milans and Inter Milans of the world have not been able to do that in the same effect that Juventus have, for example. And that's why you've seen such strongholds in both Germany and in Italy. And I don't think that one game case studies or explains if one league is better than the other league. I think that's a subjective matter regardless. But I think one thing that is becoming objective is that there are 3, perhaps 4 teams in Europe that right now are head and shoulders above the rest. And I think Real Madrid and Barcelona have the basis of continuing that, while I do fear that perhaps in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, Bayern Munich and Juventus will fall away because they're not being challenged domestically.
Fair point. That makes a lot of sense. I agree with that final point, especially about them not being challenged domestically. Max Allegri now will probably feel that he's gone as far as he can with Juventus. I mean, can he win the Champions League with Juventus? What's next for him? Do you think he'll stay? Do you think he'll go? I mean, what jobs are really available this summer?
Yeah, I think
the Arsenal job, huh?
Yeah, Arsenal.
Jonas,
the Arsenal job
would take the Arsenal job. For God's sake.
The Arsenal door's
Mr.
closed.
Wenger.
The Arsenal door is closed. It'll probably be the last point from me before I've got to duck off and leave you boys. But I think with Allegri, he's at the place like we've just said, where there is literally nowhere for him to go now. We're in between European tournaments, so the Italian national job is not going to go ahead. He's not going to step down from Juventus unless he's sacked. He's not going to be sacked, so he won't pick up another Italian job like a Milan. Well, he's already been at Milan, but like an Inter Milan or an AS Roma, he's not going to go there because he's not going to step down voluntarily. Arsenal have had their doors closed. Conte, Mourinho, Pochettino's not going to leave Tottenham this season. There's nowhere for him to go, so he's going to have to stay at Juventus, and he's going to have to rebuild that squad. And success for Juventus next season, as high as this bar is winning the Champions League. Winning the league, like we've said, is an expectation for Juventus next season, especially with a lack of challenge. So he's got to find a way to go one better. He's a great manager. He's proved that. Now he's got to somehow go one bigger, and how he does it is it's almost an impossible challenge. But there's nowhere else for him to go this season, so he's going to have to work that out in the transfer market and on the training ground, and try and find a way to freshen up that squad.
Yeah, I agree. Dan, do you need to leave us now?
Yeah, I'm going to leave you now to finish the show. Thanks for having me on. Good to chat with you, Jonas.
Absolute pleasure. Likewise, it was a nice surprise for you to pop up just as we were kicking off.
My pleasure. Catch you again soon.
Take care. Just the two of us, Jonas.
Just the two of us. That's all right. I'm all good with that.
So, in terms of transfer activity, is there any big deals going on? I know you're quite knowledgeable on Europe, all the different leagues in Europe. Is there any big deals that you expect to happen this summer? You know, the Griezmann to Manchester United thing, is that still on? Is it not on? Conflicting reports in the media, so we don't know what to believe at the minute.
A Griezmann deal is dead. It's completely dead. That's not happening. I mean, he has gone on record now and said, I mean, once the reports started coming from Spain that the CAS, I suppose the sentence for transfer activity for Atletico Madrid, that they were not allowed to register players, I instantly thought that, well, this is going to end in two ways. Either one, he's going to force his way out and he's going to be persona non grata in Atletico Madrid forever and ever and ever. or he's going to make sure he stays one more season and help him grow and help them in a situation that is very critical for him, because they're moving to a new stadium.
Yeah.
They did not have the best of seasons, and they've already managed to make sure that Diego Simeone is staying at least one more year. So this was an extremely critical time, and if he had left and they wouldn't have been able to sign the likes of Lacazette, Belotti, or someone like that to replace him, yeah, I wouldn't even been able to imagine how disappointed the Atletico Madrid supporters would have been, and also how I think the majority of the footballing world would have been disappointed in him, because Atletico Madrid has done so much for him. He owes that club so much.
Yeah.
So him staying there is a poetic justice in it. There's perhaps a little bit of footballing romance to it as well. For Manchester United fans, of course, it's horrible to hear, because they were looking for him to be the replacement for Wayne Rooney, I suppose. So I mean that deal is perhaps dead. I don't see that happening now. I see it happening next summer after the World Cup, perhaps. If that is Manchester United again, only time will tell. But yeah, that deal is probably done. And I see, in terms of deals happening, I think. And I'm speaking on what I've seen and sort of my understanding of certain things are, not necessarily that I sit with a lot of information on every single piece and deal that happens. I think Lukaku is definitely leaving Everton. If he's going to Chelsea or Man United, I don't know. I think that's the two clubs fighting for his signature. Morata is probably leaving as well. I saw last night that he closed the door on Milan, which I thought was strange, because the last information we heard there was that Milan were ready to offer silly money to get him. So I suppose, again, it's probably England for him as well. Again, Mourinho knows him very well. Conte knows him very well. So both of those teams need a striker. So I'd almost say that Man United and Chelsea will probably split Lukaku and Morata between them. Who goes where, I don't know, but it seems that those are the two strikers that will land in England.
What about another hot property in Europe at the moment, Kylian Mbappe, who's at Monaco at the moment? There's been reports that my club, Arsenal, have made astonishing bids for him. The kind of bids that, as an Arsenal fan, I don't think I don't think are true. But is there anything on that? Do you know anything about that? It looks as though he's going to leave Monaco, but could Arsenal be in there with a shout?
I mean,
please say yes.
I remember reading a big report on him when he was starting to really develop, and he, if I remember correctly, he is an Arsenal fan, I believe, and I think that Arsenal were also trying to get him to sign an academy deal when he was very young, and he played for a different team. It wasn't in Monaco, it was somewhere else. I can't remember off the top of my head now. So seemingly there's been contact previously between Mbappe and Arsenal. So there's history between the player and the club. Whether that means that he'll go there, I don't know. If I'm Kylian Mbappe and I'm looking at this Arsenal side, and whether or not they'll be able to keep Sanchez, whether or not they'll be able to keep Özil, I think Sanchez is gone. I think Özil will stay. If Mbappe is going to be the replacement for Sanchez, I'm going to wonder, for Mbappe's case, how am I going to be developing that much more for an Arsenal side that are struggling, that will be playing in Europa League next season, as opposed to staying with a core of players. Well, depending on how big that core will be once the transfer season is over, yeah. So perhaps if more players start leaving, I mean, if Bakayoko is leaving, if Mendy is leaving, if Sidibe is leaving, if Fabinho is leaving, I'd perhaps think that the chances of him leaving will increase for every other player that leaves. If say 3 more of the best players, Bakayoko, Mendy, and Fabinho leaves, I think the chances of him leaving as well are much greater. As of right now, I don't think the chances are that great of him leaving. And if Arsenal are in with a shout, well, they're bidding. If a team is bidding for a player, that means that they believe that they have a shout. That means that they believe that they have gotten in. Usually, from every director, every sort of representative for a club I've ever spoken to officially, When a team starts to actually lodge bids, when they try to bid for a player, usually, not always, but usually, that means that there's someone sitting there giving them an indication that the player would like to go, that the player would like to be part of that side, that there's been somewhere down the line someone saying that
it's not just that.
They're not just bidding for the sake of bidding, that they've been told that perhaps that player would like to go there. So I'd assume that for Mbappe's case as well. So I think Arsenal have a chance. How big that chance is, I'm not the person to ask. But I think that chance of him leaving will become greater if more players leave. But I also think that if Real Madrid or Manchester City muscle in on that deal, I see him going to Real Madrid more so than I see him going to Arsenal.
Fair enough. And just before we wrap up, Jonas, because we're running a bit short time.
Yeah.
As an Arsenal fan, this is something I'm dying to ask you, because obviously you're a football journalist. You're not caught up in the heat of this whole Wenger in and out debate. It's something that, as an Arsenal fan, drives me absolutely mad. Our games are overshadowed by it. We see infighting in the stadium. Did Wenger deserve a contract extension, in your opinion?
It's a difficult one. I think what Arsenal have done is something that Manchester United did with Sir Alex Ferguson. I think that he has stayed there for such a long time that, in a way, he has become one with the club. Meaning that sacking him, for example, is quite simply impossible. You can't sack a guy that's given so much to a club for so many years. That is sacrilegious, I think, in terms of just being upfront and decent. At the same time, I think sometimes a manager needs to understand that this is not working anymore. I am not able to bring out the best in a club. I'm not able to bring out the best in myself anymore. I commend Arsene Wenger for not giving up. I commend him for being a guy that will always give everything he has. My question is, does he have that much more to give? And are Arsenal going forward, or are they going backwards with Arsene Wenger now in 2017? I am tempted to say 11 years since they've been in the Champions League final. It's 13 years since they won the Premier League. I am surprised and a little bit shocked that Arsene Wenger himself has not stepped down. And Arsenal offering him a new contract. In a way, I understand why it was done. In another way, I think it's tough on the supporters, because I think the supporters demand so much more from their club, and they deserve so much more from their club. I think that the infighting and the way that the supporters have acted have been, disgraceful, to say the least. I think I understand and I appreciate supporters that state their opinion, but flying banners over stadium, flying a banner Wenger in one way and Wenger out the other way. I mean, it's become such a farce. And you know who's won on that farce eventually? It's Arsene Wenger, because people have gotten sympathy for him. Whenever Manchester United wanted Van Gaal gone and wanted Moyes gone, there was that one banner, but you know how the crowd responded? They sang Moyes' name even louder. And eventually when Moyes left, it was more along the lines, well, he had to go. More so than they fired him because he had to be fired. It was more, it was a difficult way of looking at it. And I commend Arsenal fans for stating their opinion. I don't commend them for the way they're doing it. And to answer your question and not being very diplomatic about it, I think that it was time for Arsene Wenger to leave now. But I understand how the club have been very, I suppose, diplomatic themselves, in that they don't want to force him out. And it's the right way of doing it. But I think it's sad and becoming a little bit it almost feels like old Yeller, don't you think? I mean, it's just the dog is about to die anyways. I mean, you just kind of want to take it behind the yard and shoot it. I mean, it's done. To me, it's done. I think Arsene Wenger is done. And I'll say that, and Arsenal will go and win the league next season. But I still think that this was the summer for him to step down. And if he stepped down after winning the FA Cup, who would have ever, doubted him or said anything bad about him once he won that? It would have been the perfect send-off. You win the FA Cup and you sail into the sunset,
I agree. That's how I feel as well. I've always been, I've always been a huge admirer of Arsene Wenger. I appreciate everything he's done for this football club, and I find it really difficult to go to a game and stand there and abuse him. And that is quite simply what they are doing at the moment.
Yeah.
There is abuse to him. Arsene Wenger, on the final home game of the season, felt that he couldn't walk around with the team and do the lap of appreciation that they always do and have done for years. And it's a sad state of affairs that he feels like that. But at the same time, you can see why supporters are getting frustrated. I agree with everything you said, in particular about the way they're voicing their opinions. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right. But this is a debate that we have all the time, and we could probably have it for hours and hours and hours. So we'll leave it there for now. I mean, Jonas, absolute pleasure having you on the show. Really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure was all mine. Fantastic to be on. Thank you.
And thank you so much. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how people can follow you on Twitter, and just a bit about what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'm a journalist, more freelance based than anything. I am connected to a newspaper in Norway called Nettavisen. We're one of the bigger newspapers in Norway. Not the biggest one, but we publish online. I work there most parts. I have had exclusive news on Premier League players. I've had exclusive news on a lot of things, more domestically in Norway, more so than internationally. Try to keep up to date with everything that goes on in Europe and European football. I have a big passion for that. I think transfer silly season is always the most fun, I have to be honest, because people go nuts over that. And I think in many ways people know me because I speak Spanish, so I translate a lot of the news. I've seen so many transfer deals come and go over the past couple of years from a social media point of view. So I become smarter and more able to dissect the rumors and sort of give people insights as to what I believe is going on. And more times than not, I've been proven to be right, which is fun. And in that way, I managed to be able to get some very good contacts. Primarily on Twitter. Everyone knows me. I tweet more than I should, and I'm able to. I'm on there on at Giaever. That's CHEGIAEVARA. I think I almost have 40,000 followers now. I have no idea how or why, but they seem to like what I'm saying. So it's always appreciated, and it is always good fun. I think for any young journalist, I've been asked this a lot. If you want to voice your opinion or sort of get your name out there, use social media for all it's worth, because it's fantastic and it's given me so many opportunities. Yeah,
no, that's great stuff. And like I said, absolute pleasure to have someone of obviously your standing in the journalist game, with us. So absolute pleasure. Hopefully have you on again soon sometime.
Of course, I'd love to be on again.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That's brought us to the end of this special edition of the Sofa Sports News show. You can follow us on Twitter at Sofa Sports News _, or you can join our Facebook page, which is Sofa Sports News - the Football Fan Network. Big shout out to our partners, Shoot the Defense, TagPay. A shout out to the Guna Eagle Eye show as well, which I was on last week. The gentleman Chris was on our show last week. We got into a bit of a heated debate around the whole Wenger situation, but all good fun.
Arsenal fans arguing about Wenger? I've never heard about that before.
Original, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that brings us to the end of the show. So thanks for listening once again, guys, and that's all.